10th, 2024 Planning Commission hearing. I will call the hearing to order at 12:59. Ms. Johnson, can we please have a roll call vote?
Thank you, Vice Chair Wardlow. I'll take roll call vote. Chair Bauke is absent. Vice Chair Wardlow.
Here.
Commissioner Barnwell is also absent. Commissioner Boss.
Present.
Commissioner DeLucia.
Here.
Commissioner Lodge.
Here.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, and that takes us to our preliminary matters. Do we have any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items?
Chair Wardlow, we do not.
Do we have any announcements and appeals?
We do not.
Thank you. That takes us to comments from members of the public pertaining to items that are not on today's agenda. Due to time constraints, each person is limited to 2 minutes. Ms. Johnson, do we have anyone in person or remote that would like to give public comment?
Thank you, Vice Chair Wardlow. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing any movement. If you would like to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive written correspondence from Mary Flood, Jennifer Sills, and Stephen Johnson that was distributed to the Commission prior to the hearing. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Wardlow.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We can now close general public comment, and that brings us to our new item, 1533 State Street. The purpose of this hearing is to review and act on the following: a conditional use permit to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption with a Type 20 license under the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act, as well as congruence with the staff environmental analysis determination that the project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. We will now turn it over to Holly Garson, Assistant Planner, for a presentation. Ms. Garson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair and Commissioners. Holly Garson, as you stated, with the City's Planning and Zoning Division, Assistant Planner, and I will be giving this staff presentation today. But before we get started, just wanted to thank you for attending the site visit on Tuesday and for hearing this item today. So here we are. The project is located at 1533 State Street. It is a 18,839 square foot lot currently developed with a one-story non-residential building, as seen here on the screen. And the tenant is the Isla Vista Food Cooperative, or IVFC, Downtown Market, featuring Cantwell's Deli. You can see here it's on the corner of State Street and West Arriaga. Here are a few additional exterior photos. This is the entrance to the market and deli. This is the side elevation as seen from State Street. And then here are just some sticker decals. You can see that you're able to see through the front of the market. The IV Downtown Market is here today requesting to change the ownership name on the existing Type 20 off-sale beer and wine alcohol beverage control, or ABC, license to sell beer, wine, and malt liquor for off-site consumption. So the license remains the same at the physical location, and will just transfer from the previous tenant, Cantwell's Market and Deli, to the new tenant of the IV Food Co-op. The ownership change is considered a substantial modification per the city's code that regulates alcohol beverage retail establishments. So therefore, that requires a new discretionary conditional use permit by the Planning Commission. And just as some background, the ABC is responsible for regulating all retail sales, alcohol sales within California. The Type 20 licenses are commonly utilized by businesses like grocery stores that wish to sell the beer and wine for the off-site consumption. While the ABC does maintain authority over licensing, cities can regulate secondary aspects of alcohol beverage sales through its land use powers, such as a conditional use permit. And the purpose of something like a conditional use permit is to address related nuisance impacts to the surrounding area from the sale and consumption of alcohol. Here's an aerial view of the project site. You can see the lot is outlined in yellow. There's a yellow arrow pointing to the structure where the market's located. And the immediate area is a mix. There's residential, commercial, there's a hotel, there's a religious facility, a church, and there is a private school in the vicinity. The findings for a conditional use permit speak to the desirability of the use regarding the public's general welfare and its compatibility with the general plan. A permit may only be granted for alcohol beverage retail establishments that are in compliance with the specific performance and development standards unless a variation is approved and is based on unreasonable financial hardship and subject to findings that the use will not have a significant adverse effect on the crime rate or encourage nuisance activities. So here are the performance and development standards. Regarding location, the IV Market has satisfied this requirement by receiving a public convenience and necessity letter from the Santa Barbara Police Department. It's dated July 30, 2024, and that's an attachment to the staff report. And as part of that process, the police department reviews the calls for service within the block, and they will only issue this letter if they can make the determination that the license will not adversely affect the crime rate, and that therefore the location will remain with the low to average crime rate as a result of the license. The license requires the IV Market to be located a minimum of 500 feet away from any sensitive receptors, and the applicant is requesting a variation to the distance requirement because the market is located within 500 feet of residentially zoned lots and the church, the religious facility, and the private school Notre Dame. The applicant has conducted outreach with these sensitive receptors and they've received support letters from the church, specifically the school, and additional residential and commercial neighbors. And you'll see those letters were attachment F to the staff report. Staff is supportive of exempting the distance requirement of 500 feet specifically because the previous business at this location, they did sell alcohol, and the floor area where it will be sold is being reduced by approximately 125 square feet, and based on the police department support indicating that the location will remain with a low to average crime rate, and that there is not an anticipated concern relative to the license for alcohol sales. So because alcohol was previously sold at this location, staff does believe this is an indicator that continued future sales will not result in nuisance-related activity, specifically because of the reduction in the floor area. The sale, distribution, and display of alcohol beverages is also limited in terms of the type and size of containers. Wine must be in a container with a volume of 750 milliliters, so this is a standard wine bottle size, or greater, except multi-pack containers of wine and multi-pack wine coolers containing no more than 6% alcohol by volume. Multi-pack wine and wine coolers shall not be sold in containers smaller than 12 ounces and in units of less than 1 4-pack for off-site consumption. Beer, ale, and malt liquor is required to be in a container with a volume greater than 32 ounces, and multi-packs in containers of 32 ounces or less shall not be sold in units less than 1 3-pack for off-site consumption. So the police department, they have confirmed with ABC that multi-packs must come from the vendor. So for example, customers can't come into the market and sort of mix and match to create their own 3-pack. The applicant does request a variation to an exception to sell the non-compliant container sizes. Staff in the Santa Barbara Police Department are not supportive of this request, and we recommend the Planning Commission deny this variation request. This variation is not considered an unreasonable financial hardship. It does not necessarily prevent the market from operating. Not being able to offer a full product line in terms of the container sizes is not a financial hardship, and instead these new operators are required to follow the requirements that are set forth in the city's ordinance. So additionally, compliance with the city's ordinance does not result in any expenditures that would constitute a financial hardship. Lastly, the police department has expressed that their support for these licenses mirrors the ABC requirements, and that ABC requires the same limitations to type and size of containers. Here are some interior photos just showing where some of the wine and beer is sold. Here's a floor plan, and in yellow highlighted indicates where the wine and beer is sold. When the Ivy Co-op became tenants, They removed all locations where tobacco products were sold, which is a requirement under number 12 on the screen. So the market will comply with the remaining performance and development standards as reflected on the screen and as detailed in the city's ordinance. The project site is in the GC Commercial General Zone and has a general plan land use designation of commercial high-density residential. Staff found that the IV Market will comply with applicable general plan policies. Again, this is outlined in the staff report and attached as attachment G. The IV Market continues an encouraged use that has existed on this site for decades. For environmental review, the project is exempt per the California Environmental Quality Act Guidelines, Section 15301 for existing facilities. This allows for operation, permitting, licensing, or minor alteration of existing private structures involving negligible or no expansion of former use. So in closing, staff recommends that the Planning Commission move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the findings and conditions of approval outlined in the staff report dated October 3rd, 2024. And we also recommend please confirm the environmental analyst determination of exemption, also outlined in the staff report dated October 3rd, 2024. And I'm here for questions if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garson, for the presentation. We will now hear from the applicant, Lisa Oglesby, President of the Board of Directors of the Ivy Food Co-op. Please state your full name and relationship to the project for the record. You will have 15 minutes to present.
Hi, I don't know how close I need to get. My name is Lisa Oglesby. I serve on the Isla Vista Food Co Board of Directors. I'm the president of the Board of Directors. Okay, sorry. Get a little nervous with public speaking, but here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the Commission for this hearing item today. And it was really nice to meet those of you who were able to attend our site visit this week. I also want to extend extra appreciation to Assistant Planner Holly Garson, who has worked with us in this expedited process. She has been great. And our co-op really appreciates the care for community that the city expresses through the COP process. I'll try and keep my comments somewhat brief. As I said, my name is Lisa Oglesby. I'm the current president of the Board of Directors for the Isla Vista Food Cooperative. The IVFC is a consumer cooperative that is open to the public and is operated at our original location in Isla Vista since 1972. Cooperatives are a different kind of business structure. Each of our 1,600-plus owners have an equal share in the co-op. We are governed by representatives of our ownership who serve on the board, such as myself, and we exist for the purpose of healthy food access and mutual benefit in the areas we serve. In January of this year, we had the opportunity to expand our circle and take over operation of the historic Cantwell's Market and Deli at State and Arriaga. And since that time, we have been enhancing that market by increasing household and grocery items, adding a produce department, highlighting local specialties and information, removing tobacco and lottery, and lowering prices. We feel such changes make a positive impact on the neighborhood by increasing full grocery options that are accessible by walking, biking, or travel by bus. Our mission is to provide healthy, affordable, local, and convenient options for all shoppers. Cooperatives make a commitment to their communities to be good stewards. Dollars spent at the co-op stay more local and are reinvested back into our workforce, organization, and community partners. We cultivate support for the producers in our local food shed. We provide good jobs for our workers. We are community-led and community-focused. Our store complies with the Santa Barbara General Plan, specifically the economy and fiscal elements of local needs and existing businesses by serving the needs of local residents, of the workforce, and businesses while managing commercial growth and encouraging the public to support local businesses. As you read in our application, we are asking for the approval of our conditional use permit for our Type 20 alcohol license, beer, wine, and malt liquor for off-site consumption, with two variations, distance and container size. The staff report finds the distance variation request to be appropriate, but does not find the requested variation in container size to be of significant financial hardship that would apply in this case. As stated in our applicant letter, we urge the Commission to review the inequity of the current ordinance and its impact on independent businesses. while not causing an economic hardship to spend money as defined by the ordinance. The impact on the beer and wine department would be significant. And as requested at the site visit, some of you wanted to know the percentage changes for what we're currently doing. So currently, wine in the single-size containers represents about 27.3 overall quantity sold and a 22.5% of total sales dollars. Beer in single-size containers represents 64.8 in quantity sold and a 56.1% in sales dollars. So in a typical day, that represents about $85 in wine, about $195 in beer, totaling about $280 a day, roughly $102,565 per year. At current margin, that would be a loss of $35,000 of profit that we use to cover expenses like rent, wages, and insurance. Grocery stores operate with very thin profit margins. A beer and wine department is an important component of any grocery store. Disallowing offerings that are available at other markets in town encourages customers to simply go elsewhere. As the Commission is aware, the ordinance that affects our business is relatively new, and only a handful of CUPs triggered by alcohol licenses have come before you since then. In fact, you may only see a few. The inequitable application of the ordinance will apply to only a subset of businesses in Santa Barbara, specifically independent markets whose ownership structure requires a transfer of alcohol license to stay in a neighborhood long-term. Corporate chain grocery stores with a different ownership structure do not ping the CUP requirement and are not subject to the same container size restrictions without substantive, purposeful changes to the scope of the market. We would like the Commission to consider the inequity of the ordinance as it is applied and the impact it has on how the consumer chooses which markets to frequent. We respectfully request the grandfathered rights held by Cantwell's Market to be extended to the IVFC, or that the city move more robustly and equitably apply the new requirements for all Type 20 licenses within the city of Santa Barbara. Doing so makes for an even playing field and allows local businesses to responsibly offer one-stop shopping options in the neighborhoods they serve. Many of our customers want to grab a meal from our deli or grab-and-go departments and pair it with a beverage to enjoy in the comfort of their home or hotel room. Be it water, tea, juice, coffee, or alcohol, individual-sized drinks are often the most appropriate choice for someone who simply does not need a larger amount. These are not airplane-sized bottled spirits, but rather single servings that meet the needs of the customer. Why should a customer be forced to buy a 750 milliliter bottle of wine or multi-pack of beer when it's more than they need or want to consume? Indeed, it makes good sense to keep consumption more moderate, as well as grocery shopping more affordable and appropriate for their budgets by offering them products in the sizes they will use. The co-op takes seriously our commitment to our neighborhoods and compliance with all laws. We ensure a safe environment through regular staff training and strong operating protocols. Our employees at both locations have been responsible beverage service trained. For decades, we have maintained good standing with the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control and the Isla Vista Foot Patrol. We bring this knowledge and experience to the downtown market location. Please know that we happily comply with all other remaining standards of this ordinance. We seek nothing more than to be able to continue operations with an uninterrupted transition from Cantwell's Market to the IVFC downtown market. We offer an extension of that historical market's legacy. We honor our role in the neighborhood and carry forward the service to our community. We ask for your support today by approving our CUP, and in doing so, allowing the co-op's downtown market to be a successful part of the downtown corridor and support the consistency and quality of options on State Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments and presentation, Ms. Oglesby. Ms. Johnson, would you please let us know how much time the applicant has remaining in case she wants to comment again?
Thank you, Vice Chair Wardlow. The applicant has 7 minutes and 52 seconds left.
Great. Thank you, and that takes us to comments from members of the public pertaining to this specific item. Ms. Johnson, do we have anyone in person or remote that would like to give public comment?
Thank you, Vice Chair Wardlow. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing any movement in the audience, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand. I do see one hand raised for Hernan Cornejo, so I'm going to go ahead and give you permission to speak, and you'll just have to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. This is Hernan Cornillo. I'm the general manager of La Vista Food Co-op. Very briefly, just to add to what Lisa already stated, two important considerations for the commission. Number one, this is not a new business. This is not a new application. We are transferring an existing license that has grandfather rights. The second, we are not also a new business. We have been in business in the county for more than 50 years. I please ask you to keep that in consideration. And the other thing is that as the staff well pointed at the beginning of the presentation, this ordinance is only supposed to be addressing the reduction of nuisance and crime. It's not an ordinance to regulate the way we do business. And with that, I finish my my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm not seeing any further hands raised, but we did receive written correspondence from Elizabeth Mulliters, Alec Gasca, Tammy Chambers, Lisa Martin, and Taylor Miller, and that was distributed to the commission prior to the hearing. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Wardlow.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We can now close public comments on this item. I will now turn to my fellow commissioners for questions. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation. Ms. Oglesby, if you just come up to the podium again, and I just want to ask one question. I'm sorry I missed the site visit. I was on my way back to town when you had it, so.
Busy lives.
And I appreciate my fellow commissioner that asked the questions about what the current sales are, because that was going to be one of my questions. And I just want to make sure that I understand from your letter that in the container size variation requests that you've put in your letter, that you are not varying in any way from what Cantwell's did. Is that correct?
Oh, no, it would be
Yeah,
the same.
It's exactly the same as
it's-
as how Cantwell's has operated in terms of the products they sell.
I mean, it's going to be a slightly different amount of products, emphasis on
Right,
products.
you're reducing
but
it,
the
yeah.
the size is, an individual size is the same. We're not adding any spirits. We don't have that kind of license anyway. And it's also the same as we do in Isla Vista, which is governed by county, but also falls under the same regulation of ABC. It's the same where you can do those individual sizes, so an individual
Right.
can of beer
So
or
you-
smaller bottle of wine.
Okay, so you're just asking to continue the operation as Cantwell's had it, but
Yes.
I know you're reducing the size, but just.
We
yeah,
did, to
yeah.
make room for more grocery
More,
items.
yeah, okay.
As the map showed.
Okay, and thank you for that. And then I guess I want to ask staff, we could add, if my fellow commissioners would be agreeable to the container size variation request, we can actually add a condition to the conditions of approval that state that no airline bottles shall be sold at any point in time. Can we do that? Or Ms. Ostringer, can we do that? Just to make sure that, if we go down a road of giving a variation, that we're not opening it up to airline bottle sales.
Vice Chair Wardlow, Commissioner Wiscombe, that could be a condition, but the bottle size, container size, was specifically put into the ordinance to limit the nuisance activity that is generated by these businesses. They have to show that there's a significant hardship. Loss of profits is not a significant hardship. That's why staff doesn't support it. And I like the IV Co-op. I went to UCSB and I shopped there. And I understand that they're continuing an operation that existed, but the whole point of the ordinance is to stop, like, when we can, at the point we can, to stop the nuisance that we're seeing in other areas of the city, in particular downtown.
Right.
That's said. So there has to be that significant hardship and I don't know if they can get there, or if you can get there, yes, you could make that a condition if you find the variation. However, I find that to be a very slippery slope, as you're going to have other distributors that are going to come in when the business name changes that are going to make this request. And to determine what is a significant hardship is, I'll leave it to the commission.
Okay, thank
And
you.
one other
Yeah.
thing, I don't know that they would have gotten their letter from the police department knowing that there may be a variation in the bottle size because it's not necessarily compliant with our local ordinance.
Okay, I guess I'm confused about the letter from the police department because their letter basically states that their crime rate is, I don't have the letter in front of me, but is normal, or it's, so they've based it on the past. So I don't know, to me, that makes sense that if they based it on the past, that, you know, they would be okay if the operations were the same as they were in the past.
Can I just clarify that it is based on the past, and we've also been maintaining that market since January of this year. So it's
Right,
the previous
yes.
months of us and past.
Right,
As I-
okay,
I'm-
yeah. And I guess, you know, the significant hardship is a hard one because it seems to me that that's very subjective. And based on, Ms. Oglesby, could you go over the figures again? I
Sure,
was kind of writing, I got 27.3 and
Sure.
22.5%, and, yeah.
Well, the basic change would be $102,000 a year in sales, which at
Out
our-
of what's the total sales?
So,
What's the percentage of sales?
Oh, for the overall market?
Yes.
Well, we haven't been there a whole year yet. We just projected out. So the numbers that I have are basically a change in what we are currently selling, right?
Right.
So the smaller size bottles of wine, not an airplane size bottle, but a smaller size bottle of wine, we sell 27.3% of what we sell are those. And it's 22.5% of sales dollars.
Right,
And for beer, an individual can is 64.8% of what we're selling,
okay,
and 56.1% in sales dollars.
okay. So just in terms of financial impact, you state $102,000. Can you give me a ballpark on what that represents? And you talked about salaries and.
Sure.
And,
Well, what
you
I
know,
can
I want
clarify
to put
is-
that figure in
Yeah.
perspective.
So at the current margin, right, so then what amount that we have left over? So we have sales, and then at the current margin, what the amount that we have left over that we use to fund things, it would be a loss of about $35,000. So that's $35,000 less in profit, and that profit is used to pay our expenses. And that's what I mean by rent, wages, insurance, paying our vendors, all those sorts of things. So that's less money into the pool of what we can use for operating profit.
And would you consider this a financial hardship for the market?
I would, because quite frankly, you've only done 4 or 5 of these CUPs, so you can go to any other market.
Mm-hmm.
And most other markets won't ever change.
Yeah.
I mean, I respect the fact that the city wants to take a stance on nuisance, of course, but I don't know how many type 20 alcohol licenses there are in the city, but I assume there's a magnitude more than the 4 that have come under the purview of this commission.
Right, yeah. And I was on the commission when we did the ordinance for this, and I know specifically it related to some,
Yeah. And so
something on the east side.
In our case, it isn't just that someone, I mean, obviously, we have a hotel nearby, so obviously, we have folks who are coming by and getting the things, but they're obviously, usually, in the evenings or in the late afternoons, they're getting something from our deli as well. And they're buying a single, we serve, I mean, individual bottles of water, individual things of tea, Coca-Cola, all those kinds of things. Individual sized bottles, we sell a lot of those drinks. So we have a lot of people who come in the market and buy something else. So if you can't get the beverage that you want, but you can get it at 7-Eleven, you wouldn't come to the market at all. There would be no reason if you can get what you want and something to eat at 7-Eleven, right? So the impact is not just on that particular department, but the impact on the overall amount of customers that we see and the sales overall. And the way I understand the ordinance is about the subjectivity of the fiscal impact is if we were being asked to build and expend money, then that would count as a hardship as it's outlined according to staff.
Okay,
So-
okay, yeah, and I understand, Ms. Ostring, I understand the slippery slope scenario. You know, if we had more requests for this type of thing, and it's really because the ownership has changed hands that this has come into play, and this ordinance has come into play. Yeah, okay. I guess that's all. I'd just like to hear from my fellow commissioners on how they feel about this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Commissioner Boss?
Thank you. I think my question is more towards staff and continuing on the same line of just general curiosity about why did the police department not support the request? That was, in the staff report says staff and the police department are not supportive of this request, but I didn't see any backup to that, and it actually says that based on feedback from PD, the site has low to average crime rates, there's not anticipated concern. I understand that's for larger container sizes, but continuing on, it says the use shall not potentially have significant adverse effects. So I didn't see anything that demonstrated that having a slightly smaller container would have that significant adverse effect on the crime rate.
Yes, thank you. Vice Chair Wardlow, through you to Commissioner Boss. I failed to put that in the staff report. I did touch on that in the presentation. So the police department, we've had a lot of coordination with them. They expressed that their support for these types of licenses, it mirrors the ABC requirements, and that the ABC requires these same limitations on the type and size of containers. So the city has our CUP process. The police department also has their deemed approved process, and then there's subsequently the actual ABC license. So it's my understanding that the police department, they don't support a variation to the container sizes, which should also be mirrored in the ABC license itself.
But to be clear, the ABC license, if it wasn't for this city-specific ordinance, would allow containers smaller than 32 ounces. So they would allow a single can of beer or a single can of wine, if it were not for the city ordinance, as it stands now, or with Cantwell's before. Is that correct?
Commissioner Boss, through the chair, our understanding is that it doesn't, that it actually, as Ms. Garson said, that their standards mirror these, but not knowing their standards, we're not experts on ABC requirements. We can't speak to that certainty. Certainly, the police department did convey to staff that they would not support this. I've given a PCN had it including the variance. They are only supportive because of not having the small container size being a part of it.
Sorry.
It is my full understanding that there is no container size requirement for ABC. And for clarification, I mean, obviously, don't take my word for it, check with Ventura ABC, but this is a type 20 alcohol license. They're standardized for the region. It's the same one we have in Isla Vista, which, as you can imagine, has a certain amount of other restrictions as well. And the container size variation exists just in the CUP. So even if the Planning Commission approved it with our size variation, it would still be in compliance with ABC. If it weren't in compliance with ABC, ABC would not grant us the license.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And I'd be supportive of Commissioner Wiscombe's recommendation to accept or approve the variation, but add something into the conditions of approval to not allow the airplane size. I think my understanding is that was the intent of the ordinance, to avoid the airplane size, but I guess I'll save the rest for deliberations. But that was really my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Boss. Now, Commissioner DeLucio.
I think most of my questions have been answered. However, you mean a type 28, am I correct?
The type,
I thought you said a type 20.
what do we, it was.
A type 20, rather. I
Type-
thought you said a type
yes.
28. Okay.
Sorry.
So
The
anyway,
type 20,
I
yes.
know that I don't know if, I can't say, maybe the city attorney knows, is the container thing part of the, you're saying it's not part of the ABC license. However, I'm from West Hollywood. I was on their planning commission for a lot of years. Actually, when those were approved there, they had that same condition in there about the size of the containers. So I mean, some of these, I don't know where that came from then, but that was in those, or we typically put that in there. And actually, there in West Hollywood, we are very sensitive also to the 500-foot radius. We pretty much are stuck to that, just FYI. So my question is, you said that the Santa Barbara Police Department sticks with pretty much with what the license says, and I think we all agree that the license has the 500-foot radius in it, correct? Away from religious schools, et cetera, and parks and kids. But it's interesting, so the police department they're okay with this based on, then there were a lot of calls here. I think there were like 655 calls to this location over 4.5 years. But I guess they didn't attribute the calls so much to the market. I guess a lot of them were in the parking lot of the market. So they came to the conclusion that they didn't have any concerns regarding the alcohol specifically at this location is what they concluded. Did they conclude that but you just made a comment, they pretty much go by what the license says. So if a license says has the 500 foot in it, they are making the exception to that though.
Vice Chair Wardlow, Commissioner DeLucio, actually, I am aware that the ABC distance requirement is 600 feet. However, our city's ordinance says 500.
Yeah.
To your point, yes, the police department, they are in support of the 500 feet distance requirement. They do look to planning for those types of things as well. I hope that answers your question.
But did they spell out did they actually spell out the limitation of the sizes to you, that they did not support the limitation of the sizes, or, because the letter says nothing to that effect. The letter only has a comment that we are in support of this license, and they base it on the number of calls, and they concluded the calls would not attributed to this business. So they're supportive. So I guess what I really need to know is, did you have a conversation, they really spell out that we don't support this because of the size, we don't support the sizes, did they actually articulate that to you?
Yes, we did have we've had several conversations to that effect. To your point, it's not explicitly stated in the PCN because I understand that's sort of a preliminary approval subsequent to obtaining a CUP and it's technically before going to ABC for your permanent license, the applicant would be going through the police department's separate deemed approval process, and at that point, they would be issuing a letter to the ABC saying, this project's before us, and we only approve it based on the standard container sizes. So at that point, I guess it would be more in writing is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it in front of me. Is that so you're saying that there'll be a more detailed letter that will go to the ABC?
What I've seen is the police department, they do produce it's sort of a memo, what I've seen from them, and that gets sent to the local ABC in Ventura.
Okay. I guess it would have been nice to have seen that detail in front of us, and I have to respect the police department's time for not being here. I'm sure they have other things to attend to, but sometimes we do have a representative from the police department here who can articulate that to us.
Sure. Thank you for the suggestion. We will consider that in the future for the next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Commissioner Lodge.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The applicant made a very strong case, as far as I was concerned. When we say a single unit of beer, are we talking about a 12-ounce can? Or is it smaller than that?
They're typically 12 to 16 ounces based off of what the manufacturer supplies. They wouldn't be smaller than 12.
They wouldn't be smaller than
You
12,
know,
okay.
Yeah, no, it would be like a can of soda at the smallest.
But you can
typically
get a
individuals are-
3-pack of 12-ounce cans with the way it's laid out.
Under the city's ordinance, they say it can't be smaller than a multi-pack from prepackaged from the vendor, so not mix and match something from the vendor. So if the manufacturer had a 3-pack, then that would be the smallest quantity under this ordinance. Whether or not the manufacturers have something as small as a 3-pack, I'm not sure yet. Obviously, most of them are 4 or 6.
Okay, but those would be 12-ounce containers?
Again, depending on what the manufacturer has, but not smaller than 12, yeah.
Okay, and with the way the regulations are now, the smallest size is how big? Say I'm for beer.
12.
It is.
Oh, under the city's ordinance?
It's a city ordinance.
32 and above, or of 33? I wasn't sure if it included 32, so 32
It's
and above.
32 ounces. Yeah.
So double the size of a soda can.
32?
That's the smallest container size that beer can be in for a type 20 license under this conditional use, she can explain it better.
Okay. But that's 32 ounces, a heck of a lot
It's a lot.
Bigger than a standard 12-ounce soda can.
Yes, one could argue that the ordinance encourages overconsumption, a full bottle of wine, at least 32 ounces of beer.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. And now we'll hear from Commissioner Wiscombe again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to point out, and maybe ask staff or Ms. Ostringer, we have general plan consistency, and I'm looking at I guess page 7 of 31, under 2, economy and physical health element, and it's item EF4, existing businesses. Now, this is a new business, but it's an existing business too, because it's been there, and it says, give priority to retaining existing enterprises as the best source of business expansion and local job growth, and encourage government, businesses, and residents to patronize local businesses and contractors by working with local businesses to initiate a buy local program. And you're basically a buy local
We are. And we've continued
organization
some of the
being a
same
co-op.
employees as well.
Yeah, with the city setting the example. So I'm just pointing that out. I don't want to say it's a stretch, but I feel like this is an existing business that has just changed ownership. And I don't know, Ms. Ostringer, do you have any comments about that? I know, is there something that could be put? I understand your slippery slope comment. You know, we don't want to be seeing more of these and having everyone say, well, you gave them a variance, so you should give us a variance. I understand that. But I'm just thinking that if it sounds like my fellow commissioners are supporting this, and if there was something that the Planning Commission could say definitively that was, this is a existing business that has changed ownership and is operating under the same model as the previous business, and we recognize that and recognize that there is a financial impact to changing the business model changing the business model to meet the ordinance, and therefore the variation, therefore the Planning Commission would approve the variation I don't know. Help me out if you can.
Commissioner Wiscombe, through the vice chair, there's a conflict when we talk about existing business as we look at it from the general plan and existing business as we look at it from our alcohol ordinance, because our alcohol ordinance distinguishes an existing business by
Right.
saying you're not existing if you're going to transfer it to a new owner. So that's the part where it's hard to make that connection. But they are continuing the same use at the same location. However, I think you still need to fall back on whether it's a significant hardship or significant difficulty or expense, and make your findings off of that. If you're going
Okay.
to allow it, and then put something in the record if that's where you're going, as to why it's, in particular, this specific business and model, it would cause a significant expense or hardship.
Okay, and then, so the variance that you're asking for, Ms. Oglesby, is to be able to sell, what's the minimum size? Is it 12 ounces in single containers? What, you have to quantify it for us.
An individual can of beer is not smaller than 12 ounces, so that would be the minimum and that would be something that's usually in a six-pack, and that would, if it was somehow broken up. But most of them are slightly larger, but I can definitely say less than 12.
You would not sell less than 12 ounce?
Oh, yeah, they don't exist, smaller
Okay.
cans of beer than that. It's like a Coke can.
Okay, and how about wine?
And wine, so a smaller serving of, a typical wine bottle is, depending on how you pour it, 4 to 6 glasses,
Right,
right?
yes.
So it's about a fourth of a size. And if I do my math correctly, it's about yay big. It would stick out of my pocket
So,
if I had it in my
do you know how
pocket.
many ounces that is for wine?
Let's see, they're in
Are
milliliters.
it's 750 mil? Is it-
750 milliliters is a standard bottle of wine.
Okay, so are we at 375 mil?
It's probably, I would say, closer to 100.
Yeah,
If
Lucille,
it's a
help me out
quarter.
here.
I could Google it.
Sorry,
You could
I
look up
Googled it.
what Albertsons has for sale right now.
She's got the answer here. She's
Commissioner
Googled
Voss.
it.
Yeah.
I Googled it based on a common small size of the sparkling wine was 187 milliliters.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. And wine-
187 mil,
Yeah.
okay. So that's sparkling wine, is
Yeah,
that,
in
is
a-
that,
in a
yeah.
bottle. Wine is also available in cans now. You've probably
Right,
seen that.
but
So
they
that
would
again
be-
would be 12 ounces
yeah,
at
that
the
would be
smallest,
bigger.
I believe.
So if it were 12 ounces or to restrict the size to 12 ounces minimum and restrict it to 100, for wine, to 187 milliliters minimum,
So
no, maximum.
12
Sorry,
ounce.
what am I, minimum or maximum?
So you're
So
saying at
confused
the
now.
smallest 12 ounces for a can of beer, it's typically in a can or a bottle, or 187 milliliters for an individual serving of wine. I believe those are the correct
Okay,
volumes. yeah.
so that actually, and the reason I need this is because if we were going to grant this variation to
Mm-hmm.
you, we're going to have to put this in the conditions of approval.
Oh, sure. yeah.
And just restrict, there will be absolutely no airline bottles or, and you don't
No.
sell
We
distilled?
don't even sell, we don't have the liquor license for distilled spirits.
Okay,
We
so.
are just beer and wine.
So we can
Yeah.
just say no airline bottles, no distilled spirits, get rid of that, and you'd be happy with.
Yeah, and-
You have a 12-ounce minimum for beer and a 187 milliliter minimum for wine.
I believe those are I believe those are correct.
Okay, okay, well,
Chair
that,
Wiscombe,
yes.
according to the internet, it's 187.5.
Oh, okay. Oh, gosh. Okay,
Thank you. And
thank you.
again, it's, we do have a temporary license from ABC while we go through this process.
Yeah.
They've given us 2 extensions. Our license, as we understand it, there are not the restrictions that, she did mention that the police report, maybe the police can provide more information because we are in line with just what ABC will allow. And it was Cantwell's on December 31st, And it was the Ivy Co-op Downtown Market on January 1st.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is what I'm hearing, I think, and I need help from my fellow commissioners, that we need to make a finding that there is a, do they use, Scarson, can you put up slide 7, please? Because that talks about the unreasonable.
Yeah, we're still in questions.
Oh, we are?
Yes.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner DeLucio, if you'd like to ask a question, and then
sorry.
we'll move to
Yeah, just a couple
deliberations
of things. I
later.
was actually on the site visit to the applicant. I didn't see any, I saw beer bottles that were like minimum 22 ounces. I didn't see any 12-ounce any 12-ounce cans of beer.
Well, we've been minimizing the stock. We weren't sure what was going to happen with the permit.
So do you have 12, so they're your 12-ounce cans are in packs right now, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
They're
in the
not-
same way we get a case
Yeah.
of Coca-Cola.
Because I
Yes.
did see, as one for the, I did see 22-ounce cans and maybe some even 32-ounce cans. I didn't see anything smaller that was outside the pack of 22 ounces.
I believe the Boochcraft is a 16-ounce can. And
Perhaps.
that's a popular one.
Okay,
That's
so
an
I didn't see any
individual.
12-ounce cans,
But
though.
but you probably saw a lot of manufacturers make very large
Yeah.
individual cans.
Okay,
But they're still not
I guess
32.
when we get to deliberations, I don't know if we even need to, at this point, I don't know if we even need to put sizes in here. If we're going to allow them to just sell anything they come in and want to buy, except for, spirit related.
Thank you, Commissioner DeLucio. I do have some questions as well, but my questions are primarily for staff. So do we have a number of how many stores in our community today are held to this new standard that sell alcohol?
Vice Chair, I don't have a number. It would just be if the project triggered a substantial modification per the ordinance, that would require a new conditional use permit per the adopted ordinance.
So we have no sense of how many we're at right now? Okay.
Oh, so far, excuse me, I misunderstood your question. I believe this is the 4th. Yes.
Okay. And when the ordinance was created, was the city aware and contemplated the fact that, a lot of these larger chains, to the applicant's point, do not trigger a CUP because their ownership structure is so substantially different? So the fact that we are applying this new ordinance to independent operators and not large-scale operators like 7-Eleven and BevMo and grocery stores and things like that?
Yeah, Vice Chair, I wasn't with the city at that time. I know that it did go through, this process began back in 2017. So for additional background, I do have a slide on that. But as far as the conversations that went into that, I would probably look to my supervisor or the city attorney for more information on that.
Given that we have to determine a financial hardship aspect, and I understand your comments regarding that it would be if they spend money to comply with an ordinance, but was this contemplated as part of the discussion when this ordinance was created? Because I do view that as a substantial difference if an independent operator, that their change in ownership would trigger the CUP, but a chain store like 7-Eleven, when they change ownership, it does not trigger a CUP. Was this contemplated when we created this ordinance?
I don't know if it was contemplated, Vice Chair Wardlow, but that's not what's written in the ordinance, so the as-applied effect is really not applicable here. You have to look at for the significant hardship.
But isn't it a significant hardship if we're only applying this new standard to some of our businesses? And given, I appreciate Commissioner Wiscombe's question and comments regarding the, our stated policy of wanting to promote existing businesses and support existing businesses, yet this ordinance would be disproportionately impacting independent existing businesses as opposed to larger chains.
Only if they transfer their ownership interests. So if 7-Eleven were to sell to someone else, then it would trigger.
Right, but since 7-Eleven and those types of structures are done under management agreements, it would not trigger a CUP?
Not necessarily, like, if they sold it, it's different. I understand you're talking about I bring in one manager as opposed to another, but it's still, the only way we can regulate it is by a transfer or sale.
I mean that with an independent operator, right, when you sell your business, it would trigger this, right? But if you are 7-Eleven, since the ownership structure is so different because you are a franchise, right, to switch ownership, right, is a management agreement. So it would not trigger this. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, but that's not, well, that isn't what's contemplated as a significant hardship, so we would have to change the ordinance.
Okay. I guess I'm just concerned that we have created an ordinance that is going to disproportionately impact the businesses that we are seeking to support in other aspects of our city's ordinance.
Yeah, I understand where you're going,
Okay.
and that's definitely a policy consideration.
Okay, great. I'm
But
glad to hear
not
that. Then,
Not as part of the findings.
okay.
May I just insert something?
Sure.
I think when we created this ordinance, I'm trying to remember back, it was done because it was a state government requirement, and I think that's correct. And they required it for, and it could be individual businesses, I don't know. Do you have any comments on that, Ms. Ostringer? I don't remember. I just know it affected, so far, I think the 4 have affected individually owned businesses. This is the 4th one that,
Yeah, I don't recall.
yeah, I'm sorry, I don't
Could I-
either.
No worries.
Could I just
Sure.
provide, so in 2023, Albertsons acquired Vons. Did they do a CUP?
I don't know.
Because the ordinance came in effect in 2021, correct?
Correct.
I do want to, through the chair and commissioners, I do want to state that, so I don't have knowledge on that, but I do want to clarify that they wouldn't have been exempt. So whether or not they got it or not, I don't think they did. Part of the problem has been capturing how these even come in and how we're made aware of them, because it's not current knowledge that those things are required. But I wanted to read the ordinance itself and be clear that it's not directed at just like independently owned. So it actually does apply. So uses may include but are not limited to liquor stores, beer and wine stores, convenience markets, mini markets, markets, neighborhood markets, retail sales establishments, wine shops, and service stations. It does not apply to sale on alcohol establishments such as a restaurant, bar, or alcoholic beverage manufacturers such as a winery, brewery, or microbrewery that sells alcohol for off-site consumption. So really the only exceptions are like breweries and wineries or restaurants. A supermarket would need to comply with this. So it's not directed just at independent owners.
And I do understand that. I think I think I've made this point clear already. So I have
Yeah.
concerns about how it is being unequally applied in real
Understood.
time because
Yeah.
of ownership structure differences. And it seems that the city did not contemplate that difference of that a large grocery chain would not be subject to this. And if our goal, as stated in other aspects of the city's policy, is to support local independent businesses, that is in conflict with this. And so if we as this commission have the ability to grant a variance to support a local business, that would be aligned with our broader goals as a city. So my next question is.
Chair, just really quick to jump in. If we were to discover that there was a transfer from Albertsons to Vons or Vons to Albertsons and triggered it, that's an enforcement issue that we can, as soon as we become aware of something like that, we'll take action to make sure that they're complying with our state law, our local law.
Those things are.
Right. I think that the issue, though, is that because of the structure of the companies, right, when you do a management agreement and you transfer a license, it's different for a bonds because of their structure as a business. So likely it wouldn't actually trigger our CUP. Does that make sense? Because their corporate structure is different. You can do a management agreement, whereas you would not be able to do that likely.
I would not. And
Yeah.
I would not have the funds
And-
to sue the city,
Right. And so, those are,
as Albertsons likely would.
the
and have in other-
practicality of implementing this policy, how it is turning out, right, is that we are going to enforce it on the businesses that trigger it because they don't have a management, because their ownership structure does not allow for management agreement style agreements, whereas larger conglomerations do allow for management agreements, which would not trigger our CUP, and so therefore we are disproportionately, going to enforce this, and that's concerning. But I will move on. So we are still able, the goal of this ordinance, I assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was because there's been a lot of significant work around the background on has there been nuisances, have there been calls for service. So the goal of this ordinance was to ensure that if we were going to have smaller containers, that would reduce nuisances, correct?
Vice Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of the goals of the
That was
ordinance.
one of the goals,
Yeah.
okay. And in this ordinance, though, a 40, right, like 40 ounces, you're still allowed to sell those, right?
That's correct. It's greater than the 32
Great.
ounces, yes.
And so, with the kind of loitering and unsavory behavior that I think that this ordinance was trying to address, some of those types of products are still going to be sold. So if the goal of the ordinance was to address nuisances, and yet this business has already, and as stated in the staff report, that staff is supportive of the distance waiver because alcohol was previously sold at this location, staff believes this is indicative that continued future sales will not result in nuisances related to this activity. Why is it that when the distance requirement, we're applying the knowledge that because in the past there haven't been substantial nuisances, yet we're not applying that same rationale from the perspective of this business also has been selling these smaller containers and have not had nuisances? Why is the rationale application separate for these two different variances?
Vice Chair, I think when it comes down to it, why the difference in thinking is due to the variation and the fact that it needs to be found the unreasonable financial hardship, whereas, I mean, it's an existing structure, so the distance, I don't think I'm making sense, but I think when you're looking, the containers has to do with the actual product you're selling, so then that's associated with financial aspects of the business. That's my understanding. I can, if you have anything to add on that.
Vice Chair Wardlow, so it's not, if there was no variation to the location, that would be a significant hardship because they wouldn't exist. In this
Right.
case, so
But the
we're not looking at, the finding's not whether it's creating a nuisance. In this case, is there a significant hardship? If the variation in location, if that didn't happen, there would be nothing. However, they can still operate for profit without selling the smaller container sizes. And then to the point, it's not just the ownership that triggers it. There's other things in the code that could trigger it for larger businesses. It's not just when you transfer. It's, are you changing square footage? Are you extending hours? These are all triggers.
I appreciate that explanation. That makes a lot more sense to me, so thank you. So then my next question would be, I understand that, we've been told by staff that PD would disagree with this, though we did not receive a letter from PD disagreeing with this specific component. So would it make more sense, given that we don't have any letter from PD, and the letter we do have says that they are supportive of this, from a process perspective, if this commission finds that there is financial hardship, because from my perspective, there's definitely financial hardship. We're disproportionately impacting small businesses, and we are taking away their ability of, I think, 20 to 30% of their revenue by reducing this, taking this ability to sell these products out. If we find that this is a financial hardship, then you're saying that PD would then send a letter to the ABC. Is it the best course of action to let the applicant, deal with that at the ABC level and let us move forward, with granting them at the local level the ability to sell this, and then they can see what happens with the ABC?
Chair Ward, though, that's up to your commission to decide. I don't know that we can advise on that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Vice Chair Wardlow, so what would, if PD came out, so that's the risk on the applicant. If you were to do that and PD came out strongly to ABC and said, no, I don't know, I mean, they'd have a CUP, but maybe not. a liquor license.
But then if the commission doesn't grant the variance now, then they don't have any shot. But if we grant the variation, given that for ABC law, this is allowed, right? This is a local law that we are, implementing on small businesses. The ABC could override PD and say, we're fine with it because we don't do this in any other jurisdiction.
If you granted the variation.
Right.
Then yes. I wouldn't
Great.
say that they have no option. You could grant it without the variation, and they would still have a CUP, and they would have PD support.
Did you understand that? What was that? Say that again?
If you didn't add the variation to the container size, and you granted the CUP, then they would go in knowing that they have the police department support, because what the police department doesn't support is a variation to the container size.
But we don't have a record of the police department not supporting the variation, this commission, because we never got a letter saying that. So I'll ask the applicant, would you prefer?
This is obviously, it's a conditional use permit up to the condition of the planning commission, and ABC can, for whatever reason they choose under their jurisdiction, pull an alcohol license at any time. So we are not running into the Wild West.
Right.
If we were approved, we would still be conditional to all of the other things
Right.
that we are conditional under.
So as the applicant, understanding kind of, I think what Ms. Arciniega is laying out for us is the risk of if we move forward with granting you this variance and PD does send a letter to the ABC, would you prefer that we move forward with granting you the variance and the potential that PD comes out against this specific area? Would you prefer that, or because that's out of our control?
Well, I guess I don't know whether or not there's an option, and maybe you can clarify for me. If the planning commission were to approve it with the two variances we requested, and the police department, I suppose, appealed one of the variances, do we have another audience with this commission to say, okay, we're not getting that one, but we still have something, because it's, as I said, it's roughly 5% of our sales overall, but grocery margins are very, very small. It's an operational hit that's significant with most grocery stores operate with, it's called an EBITDA of about 1.5. And so that would be significant. So it's in my best interest to advocate for this market to be able to have the full range of grandfathered rights that the market, the previous market had in an uninterrupted business scenario. But if the PD wanted to appeal it and come back to it, we would be happy to come back to the commission and have that discussion again and see where we go. I don't want to lose my license entirely.
And so that's what we want to make sure, we're not setting you up for.
I cannot risk losing my license entirely. That is too much of a hardship. That would kill the business.
Right. So, Ms. Arciniega, what would you recommend if this commission is, and maybe I should do this afterwards if we move to deliberations and finalize, everyone's final comments on this, but just so we understand, obviously, I think everybody does not want to put the applicant in a position where her whole license could be denied if PD were to send a letter against this one component. So we want to do what's best for the applicant. What would you recommend?
So I can tell you, the police department can't appeal this decision to this body. They're the city, so if you issue it, what they would do is send a letter of non-support, and from what I understand, they don't support it, to the ABC, and then basically it's up to the applicant to take their chances with the ABC.
And are we 100% confident that PD would do that? Send this letter?
I don't know. I know they don't support it.
Okay, but
the
we don't actually
variation.
know that they're going to send a letter.
Yeah, I can't say what the risk is either.
Okay. Thank you for kind of bearing with us as we work through this.
Sorry. It's all very new.
I'm going to turn to some of my fellow commissioners as other people have more questions, and then we'll move to deliberations soon. So, Boss, for questions.
Thank you. A question for the applicant. So when you're submitting for ABC or to ABC, would you be including the conditions of approval that this body approves which would show that the commission was supportive of your intent to sell the smaller containers, even if PD also had a letter. So they would consider both.
So when it moves from the commission back to the planning department, we don't produce something for ABC. ABC receives something from planning and zoning, this is, again, new territory. So I don't know what ABC receives from the city of Santa Barbara. So I don't know.
Maybe then staff can answer.
Sure. Chair Wardlow and Commissioners, Commissioner Boss. So it's new ground for all of us. We've done 4. Our understanding is that, so your conditional use permit, as Ms. Alstringer stated, is not necessarily appealable or challenged by PD. When we conclude this CUP process, then the next steps is that the police department works with the applicant in their application to ABC. So it's the letter, that communication to ABC. It's outside. We're done with them, and then they move on to working with ABC.
But would that letter that is ultimately submitted include the Planning Commission's recommendation to allow the smaller containers?
I don't think so. I think they're 2 separate regulatory agencies, right? It's a similar fishing game and, a county permit. You can have overlapping jurisdiction regarding the same project, but you each have your own set of rules. They don't necessarily interact. But what's unique versus that example here is that the city police department is involved in both steps. So they're instrumental in the city conditional use permit process, and they're instrumental in the ABC process. So that's where it's kind of unique. And so we have an insight that we know their stance on this project, and that's why staff provided the recommendation to go in that direction, knowing that that's their intent for step 2, if you will, with the ABC. But they are 2 distinct entitlements.
The only thing I can say is that I did speak with the city attorney just to get some information to start this, and my understanding is that the PD is obviously going to be in alignment with the ordinance.
Commissioner DeLucia.
Okay. So what I didn't get a couple of questions answered was, I'm not clear, and I don't really, maybe you want to sit down, because I actually think we're giving too much time to the applicant, okay? This is pretty much we're asking questions. It's really among us to deliberate.
We're not there yet. We're not.
I know we're not there yet, but I'm not clear if now I'm confused. I'm not clear if the ABC, and I really don't know if I can vote on this today. I may want a continuation. I'm not clear if the ABC dictates sizes of containers. If that's it, I'm not sure, does anybody know the answer to that? And the other thing is, I'm not clear also, there's not a representative here from the police department, so I'm also not clear if they, what they base their determination on. All I know is this is a letter with two lines of information on it, and a staff report that says they based it on the service calls, and they made a determination that weren't concerned about alcohol specifically at this location. That's all I'm left with here. So I am not in a position where I would probably be able to vote for this, because things are not answered here for
Do you have
me.
a question, DeLucia?
Well, those are my deliberations.
Okay. All right, well, it sounds like we're going to move on to deliberations
Yeah,
now.
if I may, I
Yep.
think there was a question, somewhat of a question. I think Commissioner DeLucio's question is, can we get more information, and how do we know what the police department says, and really what's the process after we finish this land use, the police department's role. We could continue this item if you would like, so we can get to a date certain, so we can get someone from the PD here to answer these questions for you. I don't know if Ms. Arciniega would.
Thanks, Ms. Alstringer. Yes, so we could continue this to next week. We have not yet canceled next week, tonight's Planning Commission agenda. There are no other items on, so if we do not continue it to next week, we will be canceling that hearing. We could do that with a date certain, not requiring noticing. That is an option, and we would reach out to police and have them attend if that was the commission's desire. I do understand that the applicant has worked very hard, staff and the applicant has worked hard to try to have a quick review considering just the steps involved, so we are cognizant of time. I would not suggest pushing it further than that.
My concern, Vice Chair Wardlow, is should you make a motion and you choose to grant the variation, I don't know what that would do for the applicant with the ABC, and if it would potentially cause them some hardship in not getting their license. So
If PD sent the letter,
yeah,
because we don't know if they will for sure or not.
right.
Right. So that's, okay. All right, well, let's move on to deliberations. I think that,
Well, I was deliberating.
okay.
I guess I was deliberating already, right? So can I continue? or-
Sure.
I basically thank you for the answers to the questions, and obviously I'm in favor of a continuation until we get some more questions answered. Just be helpful maybe to the applicant to maybe wait a week. I wasn't here when the ordinance was written. I actually probably if I had my say in that ordinance, I probably wouldn't have put this in there about existing businesses as just transferring licenses, and everything else is the same, that you couldn't just continue to operate the way you were operating. But that's not the way this reads right now, so that's why we're having all this deliberation about coming to a conclusion and trying to figure out what the hardship would be here.
Thank you, Commissioner DiLucio. Commissioner Boss?
Thank you. I'm comfortable taking a vote today. Couple comments. I wanted to just really appreciate the community outreach that you did and the letters of support from my church, from schools, from, just really appreciate that you've done the work in the community. I don't think any of us have a problem with the distance variation request. And I agree with the applicant's request and really appreciate the sales information provided today. It demonstrated that the change would result in a financial hardship. And I would like to allow smaller containers, excluding the airplane-sized bottles, which I think most of us were agreed with. And I'm not sure how to include this. I'll just say it. It sounds like we need to do some cleanup on the ordinance, whether it's related to monitoring or enforcement or intent. So I'm hoping that we can reconsider, I guess, the intent of the ordinance and any language cleanup at a later date.
Thank you, Commissioner Boss. Commissioner Lodge?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The conditional use permit, it says on the screen, performance and development standards. CUP may only be granted if consistent with the standards or if a variation of the standards is approved by the Planning Commission based on unreasonable financial hardship. And I can make that finding. And so I would support the granting of the conditional use permit. I just want to mention the number, some 300 calls to this location. It was 300 calls to this block. So it wasn't just to Cantwell's.
Thank you.
I think that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Commissioner Wiscombe?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I support Commissioner Boss's comments and Commissioner Lodge's comments about moving forward today. I think a good way to move forward is, I'm looking at the staff report, and I think Vice Chair Wardlow, you mentioned this. This is on page 5 at the very top. Because alcohol was previously sold at this location, staff believe that this is a dedicated indicator that the continued future sales will not result in nuisance-related activities, even more so with the floor space devoted to alcohol being reduced. I think that's really a key statement that should be in our findings, because it comes right from the staff report. They are reducing the area, and alcohol was previously sold at this location in the sizes that they're asking to continue. And I think, so I think that's important for Planning Commission to include that. And then also that we have found that, and I don't know where this is in the staff report, but I don't think I made it up, will not have a significant adverse effect on crime or nuisance, and that the police department used 4+ years of data from operation from the previous owner. I think that's another key finding that we can make. Ms. Garson, maybe you can find that in the staff report. I think it was 4 years and 6 months, and I took out the 6 months because I think that's your 6 months, probably.
Yes.
Yeah, so I took that out, but 4+ years of data from operation from the previous owner. So I think that's really important for us to state. And I think also, as Commissioner Lodge said, this is an unreasonable, this is a financial hardship for them if we do not grant the variance. And I think, did you say 5% of overall sales represents? Yeah, okay, represents 5% of overall sales, which is significant for a small business that, in our general plan, we are trying to promote local small businesses. So I think that's important for us to state. And I guess that's it. And then maybe have reduced the, or indicate the size of the containers that we would approve in the variance, the 12 ounces of beer and the 187.5 mils of wine. And I think that would pretty much cover it. Obviously, we'd have to make some changes to the findings, I think, but I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet. But those, to me, are the key things that we would want to say in terms of our support for, you know, our biggest concern is obviously the police department, but staff says right up here that it's a dedicative indicator that continued future sales will not result in nuisance. And they're basing that statement on the past activities, and the police department is basing their letter on 4+ years of data. And I think we can be pretty firm about that. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. And then I'm just going to make some comments, and then if you want to go again. So I really appreciate staff's work with us, because obviously there's a lot of questions, and we just want to do what's best for the applicant as a beloved local small business. So, you know, to Commissioner Wiscombe's point on some of the things that are noted in the staff report that I think that make us at a point where we can make the findings that we can grant this variance. On page 6, it says the police department did not note any concerns regarding alcohol specifically at this location. And I think, you know, given the track record of this business and the ability that we're all already comfortable with granting the waiver on the location distance requirements, I can make the findings that were outlined by Commissioner Boss and Commissioner Wiscombe, as well as Commissioner Lodge, that I do feel that this creates a financial hardship for the applicant, and I would like to be supportive of the waiver for the small alcohol containers, as well as the waiver for the distance requirements. I'm comfortable making a vote today based on this information. And Commissioner DeLucio, I will let you have closing deliberation marks.
Yeah, I think one of the main points here, if we are going to vote for this, would be that the reduction of the square footage. Because we already approved 3 of them already, and we didn't give them hardships. And now, the ones that come forward will probably come with hardships, obviously, but so we have to really be careful. So I think what's really clear here is a reduction in square footage, and that resulted in a reduction in their profit. So I think all that's the cause and the effect of that, I think, needs to be in there. I also think we need to maybe make a separate comment to initiate some cleanup to this ordinance, where I just don't, I think
That's not within the purview of the Planning Commission.
the city council would have to,
Correct.
maybe they'll see this and they'll let us know. But so basically, we're interpreting this that the police department is okay with with this blanket, thing, they're not prohibiting the size based on the service calls. That's what we're equating it to?
I think it's this commission's discretion of whether or not we believe that this is creating a financial hardship for the business. And I would say that based on the fact that it will reduce their sales, it will, to the applicant's point, likely reduce their overall customers because people that would normally shop here to purchase a single-serving alcohol container alongside a sandwich will go elsewhere. So there is two levels of financial hardship on that front, as well as the fact that I think we can all agree that there is some inequity in the enforcement of this ordinance. But mostly that I think what's most important is that when another applicant comes forward for this use, this is a specific to this location that the police department has made clear that there is not an issue or concern regarding nuisances in relation to alcohol sales. If the applicant was in a different location and there was a history of related issues regarding nuisances related to alcohol sales, this would be a different conversation. But given that they have a track record of complying and not having issues with this, I think we can.
It's also characteristics of the location. I know the location and the customers that they serve. They actually serve a lot of tourist customers. So, anyway.
I appreciate my fellow commissioners' comments and questions. Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Wiscombe.
Okay, and staff's going to have to help me out here because we have a number of findings. So I'm looking at the recommended findings. Obviously, the environmental review, this is on page 7. And then the conditional use permit findings. And I haven't read them thoroughly, but I think we can make them all, right? I think we can, but we're going to add some additional ones to those, correct? Someone go over that and make sure. Yeah, I have them here.
It's this one we need to replace.
Oh, that one, okay, containers. Where's that one?
It's on page 17 of 31. You can have my page.
While Commissioner Wiscombe.
Oh, okay, I'm not there yet. I'm in findings, I'm not to the conditions of approval yet, okay? So I'm still in findings. I think in findings, yeah.
Slide for these.
Huh?
There's another slide for these. It says up at the top, slide 1 of 2.
Okay.
Could we see?
Can you go back, please? And I'll just, okay. So the proposed use is allowed with conditional use permit, blah, blah, blah. Yes, okay. We can make these findings, okay. And then the next page, findings, we did the environmental one. And then E, F, and G. And then I think we want to add one that basically says, if we can do it here, that basically says that the Planning Commission finds that based on 4 years and 6 months of data from the police department, and you can quote the years, that it was through July of 2024, finds that a variance requested by the applicant because, and I want you to just quote the language, so we're going to need help here, because staff believes that this is a dedicated indicator that the continued future sales will not result in the nuisance-related activity, even more so with the floor space devoted to the alcohol being reduced. Because alcohol was, I would like that sentence in there, the Planning Commission finds, and put this sentence in there, and it is based on 4 years and 6 months of police department review.
If you go to page 10 of the staff report, I think you will find at the top of that,
Yes.
at the top of page 10, the findings that were laid out by staff. So if you want to modify those to reflect that we are going to be supportive of the variation.
Okay.
And then I also just want to note, Commissioner Wiscombe, when we're going to the distance requirement, the motion needs to include that it's regardless of the actual distance, because given that there's likely a housing being built on top of it, that it's, if the square footage were to be expanded, or if there were to be housing directly on top of this, that would not change our finding regarding the fact that we are comfortable with the variation on the distance. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So you're saying for the 500 feet?
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So the other findings, well, I think in other findings, the Planning Commission finds that the requested variation to the minimum container size is an appropriate financial hardship. Hold on, because it does not prohibit continued use and does not result in any expenditure. Is an appropriate financial hardship, I think, period, right? Due to the fact that it represents approximately 5% of, do we want to say that or not? No, okay, just end it with financial hardship, okay. And then I do want to go back to the Planning Commission, okay, let's see. Planning Commission finds that the requested exemption to distance, oh, okay, this is what you were saying. Okay, so we leave that one in there.
Yes, but we need to expand it a little bit to make it very clear that it is in regardless to how close a, sensitive use is, because a residential that's, though we're hitting the buffer now, it could be closer than the current buffers, right? Because the housing's being developed on top of it.
Okay. So maybe you can.
And this was recommended to me by staff, that we just clarify this, because it wasn't specified in the staff report, that when we make the finding regarding the variation to the distance, that we make it clear that it is regardless of if that actual distance were to change.
Okay, so maybe you could work on that finding just for that. I want to go back to the variation and why we're supporting it and what we find. So we find that it's a financial hardship, and we find that based on the police department's review of 4 years and 6 months of data from the operation of the previous owner, or 4 years plus of operation from the previous owner, that there is not a significant adverse effect on crime or nuisance. And we found the unreasonable hardship. And also that the Planning Commission finds that granting the variance is in support of a local business which is in compliance with our general plan, or supports our general plan that supports our general plan for economic and fiscal health element. And then we get to the one about the housing.
Do you want me to do that one?
Yeah, do you want to do that one?
The Planning Commission finds that the requested exemption to the distance requirements requiring that new non-transferred license only be located on a lot that is a minimum of 500 feet away from any residentially zoned lot, or any lot that contains a public or private elementary or a high school, healthcare facilities, social services, substance abuse centers, religious facilities, parks, or playgrounds, is appropriate. And to make clear that if the exact distance were to change, that would not change the findings of this commission.
Okay, and I'm, on the first one, on the other findings, do we want to say that the Planning Commission supports the applicant's variance because we find that, and then we go into the financial,
I feel like you did that, but I'll defer to staff.
yeah, I don't know. If I just want to make sure that it's clear that we support the variance. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to do one more stab at it? Is that?
Yeah,
reasonable
I
to
think,
staff?
well, I think maybe.
Pardon the
I could do it.
interruption.
You guys are working on it, so maybe,
Vice Chair Wardlow, to Commissioner Wiscombe, I can also read it back if you would
yeah,
like.
I think
That'd be
that's
helpful.
really, really helpful. And then we have to go on to the conditions of approval. So, okay.
Okay, and apologies if I missed anything, just correct me, but I have 3 points right now. So the Planning Commission's requested variation due to the requested container size is an appropriate financial hardship, and based on the Police Department review of 4 years and 6 months of data of operation from the previous owner, that there is not a significant adverse effect on crime and nuisance. And then point 2 is the Planning Commission finds that granting the variance is in support of a local business, which is in compliance with the general plan for economic and fiscal health. And then point 3, there's the whole beginning portion of the condition that already exists. And then the portion that you guys are adding is if the exact distance were to change, that would not change the findings of the Planning Commission.
Sounds good to
Sounds
me. I think you get a bottle of wine for that one. So does that sound good to everybody? And then I think we need to just go on to the conditions of approval to reflect what we've done.
Is it, yeah, do we want to make a motion?
Oh, I thought that
Do
was
we-
kind of
I
a
mean, sorry,
motion.
do we want to do a vote on that, or do we need to finish with the conditions first?
I think we just finished with the
Okay, finish, sorry,
conditions.
sorry.
Yeah, and then we're done. And the conditions are, okay, so if people could look through them and make sure we're getting it all. I'm looking at page 2 of 4, under 3 containers, because that's where Commissioner DeLuccio told me to go, and he's exactly right, yeah, containers. The sale, distribution, and dispensation and display of alcoholic beverages is limited. I'm sorry, I had another thought on the motion, but just that we also support it because it is never mind. Okay. Is limited to the following type and size of containers. And I think for the wine and wine coolers, it's 187.5 milliliters minimum. Yes.
Yes.
Minimum, yeah, okay. And for beer, alcohol, and malt liquor, it's, what is it, 12 ounces minimum?
ounces.
Yeah, 12 ounces minimum. And do we want to say no airline bottles under any circumstances, or do we leave that out? I think we don't need to
I don't
because
think we
it's
need- 'cause they
minimum.
don't have an
And they don't
alcohol.
have a
Yeah.
license to sell distilled spirits anyway. So you can see we're slightly out of our league here. I think that's it, right?
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Oh, do we have a motion in a second?
Yeah, thank you, Vice
sorry.
Chair Wardlow. We just need a second for the
I'll
motion.
second.
Okay, roll call
Can we have a
vote.
roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair Wardlow. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner DeLuccio,
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes.
Commissioner Boss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wardlow.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That was good.
Can I just make sure, can we clarify if it's 187 or 187.5? Is it okay? Does someone want to Google it just to make sure?
187.5.
187.5? Okay.
Yeah, isn't that what we said?
What I found was 187.5. Ms. Ostrander found one.
I think I found 187.5, so I'd go on the greater side.
I found 187.5 too.
Why don't,
I'm just, I got a text from my manager saying it was 187, not 187.5. I don't know.
yeah,
Let's change it to 187, just since it's a minimum. That's fine with me.
do we need to do another roll call vote to change it to 187 instead of 187.5?
So the way it reads is, a wine must be in a container with a volume of 187.5 or greater. So, yeah, I guess you could
Yeah.
change it to 187, and that would
Okay.
take the .5 into
So
consideration.
I'll move to revise it to 187.
Can Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair Wardlow. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Wiscombe,
Yes.
Commissioner Boss,
Yes.
Commissioner DeLucia,
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wardlow.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, staff, for working through this with us. We appreciate everyone's time and patience of muddling through and making sure we're doing the best that we can to support this applicant. That takes us to our administrative agenda. Do we have any committee and liaison reports? Oh, wait, no, I apologize. I really apologize. So this is that we're closing out this item. This, the appeal period, this action of the commission is subject to a 10-day calendar appeal period. Thank you, Ms. Carson, for bringing this item to us. Now we will move on to the administrative portion of our agenda. Do we have any committee or liaison reports? Nope. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It is. Oh. All right. Commissioner Wiscombe has a report to give.
I just wanted to mention that on October 3rd, the Street Tree Advisory Committee met and recommended changes in designation of the trees on, if you didn't see it, the 300 and 800 block of Anapamu from Italian stone pines to coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia. And that no existing trees will be affected. And that's going to the Parks and Recreation Commission on October 3rd for consideration at their regular meeting. Street Tree Advisory Committee makes recommendations to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and they make the final decision on those. And I actually don't know if HLC will be involved or, because they are historic trees. I don't know. There was nothing that indicated where HLC, what their role would be. I don't know. Maybe Commissioner Lodge knows.
Well,
Commissioner
I
Lodge.
can't say that I know for certain, but since the stone pines that are there will not be affected, perhaps not. I don't really know. This action is, the stone pines that are there remain unless they fall over or what have you. But it's just any replacements, filling in the tree wells, the empty tree wells.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge and Commissioner Wiscombe. Do we have any other liaison reports? If not, thank you all very much. It is now 2:41. That concludes our October 10th, 2024 Planning Commission hearing. Our next hearing is tentatively scheduled for October 17th, unless staff is saying that that meeting is now canceled.
Yes, it will now be canceled, so then it would be November 7th.
Our next Planning Commission will be October 7th.
No.
November 7th. Jesus. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.